this is Laura Pepper Wu from the Right Life magazine, and today we are talking with Lindsay Buroker. Lindsay is a full-time indie writer from Seattle, but living in the mountains in Arizona. She has self-published 11 books in the steampunk and high fantasy genres, and she writes about self-publishing and writing at lindsayburoker.com. Hi, Lindsay.
Hello.
How are you today?
Doing good here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh,
or
no
the
problem.
magazine, I guess we are.
So I found you online because you write this incredibly helpful blog. You are a full-time indie writer, and you are incredibly generous with the knowledge that you've built up over the last few years since self-publishing your books. And today I want to talk about one of the posts that you published in January, I believe, which was your 7 lessons that you learned in 2013. I had to think about what year we were on there, so from last year. Yeah, I basically want to highlight some of those lessons and have you expand on some of them because they were so incredibly useful. So the first one was about your series and how I think I have the lessons here in front of me. Lesson number 2 was a series with dedicated readers is what leads to a reliable income. So I want to know a bit about your story and how long it took you to kind of go full-time with your indie writing, and how did you go about building that base of dedicated readers?
Okay, I guess I'm lucky because I started right out of the blocks with a series idea. I'd had those characters running around in my head for like 10 years, and like a lot of writers, I think it probably took me about 7 years to finish my first novel. There were a lot of false starts and years off in between, that sort of thing. But, and then actually when I finished the first one, this was my first in my Emperor's Edge series, which is like a high fantasy adventure stuff, kind of outlaws, fugitives in a fantasy setting. And when I first finished it, I thought, I don't really see myself getting an agent for this because most of the agent sites I read about really were like saying we don't want swords and sorcery or anything Tolkien-esque or secondary world. It just seemed like we've seen enough of that. We don't want it. Mm-hmm. So I put that aside. But that's sort of my first, my passion. But I decided to write a different novel set in the same world. It was like 20 years earlier with different characters. And so I did that. And then I thought, well, I'll try to query it anyway because that's what you have to do, right, if you want to get a publishing deal. And I was just about to do that. I'd written the query letters, and then I found J.A. Conrad's blog, mm-hmm. which I'm sure many of your readers have heard about.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, all this money he's making from self-publishing. And he was also pointing me towards a couple other authors who hadn't been traditionally published and who just started out self-publishing and who were also doing well. This was fall of 2010.
Okay.
And it was also about that time I got my first Kindle. I was kind of unaware of that ebooks had kind of come into their own until I got on the bandwagon myself, and I was like, oh, this is great. I was just going to have it for traveling, and
right.
And I ended up, buying almost all my books that way from that point on. So really quickly, I got really excited about it, and I just decided, forget the agent thing. I'm just going to self-publish these 2 novels. And unfortunately, I guess they weren't related, or they were very loosely related by being in the same world. But I thought, I can do a second book. I was really excited to do a series with that Emperor's Edge, those characters. So I published those first 2. Didn't have a lot of sales. I had some early, I think I sold them for $2.99. And even then, I was like, nobody's going to buy it at $2.99. I'm a nobody. But what I did do early on is I had a short story also that was set with those characters that I'd written it for some like Swords and Sorceress anthology submission or something. And I remember it almost made the cut, but they wasn't quite there, so I still had the rights to it. And I put that one out for free with an excerpt in the back of the novel. And that's sort of the first thing I did that really kind of helped me start getting some sales. And I also had a nice review early on from the Fantasy Critic blog. I might have to look it up to remember his blog, but a really nice little blog on fantasy and science fiction.
Okay, and was that
so I published this. Okay.
Sorry to butt in. Was that
Go ahead.
short story?
Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Did you publish? I just wanted to ask about the short story. Was that something you published and gave away on your blog, or were you able to put that up on the Kindle and give that away for free on the Kindle?
at the time, I didn't know how to get a book or a short story listed as free on Amazon, so it wasn't there, which is too bad because that probably would have been a big help too. But I did get it through Smashwords into Barnes & Noble and eventually Kobo and iTunes as a free ebook. And I remember putting it everywhere I could find online. Like I think I had it on Scribd and like several free book sites, and I might have had it on my blog too. But at the time, I didn't have a whole lot of blog readers, so I knew it needed to be out there in the marketplaces for people to find it. And so that was definitely a help doing that.
So that's how you built those dedicated readers in the beginning, was giving away something for free and then kind of earning their respect that way.
Right, and I did sell some, I tried Goodreads advertising, and, I maybe would spend $2 to make $2.05 or something. I did sell some books that way, and I did get some reviews early on by giving them away on forums, offering review copies. And so I made a little progress. And when the second one came out, I had a few readers that went out and got it. And I think that summer, I put the first one at 99 cents, and that kind of gave me a nice boost. That was still, this would have been summer of 2011. So you weren't quite inundated with 99-cent titles yet. And then in November or so, I published the third one, and I made the first one free. And that was sort of, that was a really big earnings month the next couple of months for me because of that. I sold a lot of the second and third one, and that's when I really started building a reader base. And I was writing some short stories and some other stuff on the side just so I could keep my name out there and keep publishing pretty frequently. And, there have been ups and downs since then, but especially the last 2 years, my income has been pretty solid, and I've been doing this full time.
Awesome. Okay, I want to move on to lesson number 3. You should give a book time on the market before giving up on it or making hasty decisions regarding series potential. So, how long do you leave a book on the market before you make any decisions, and what feedback do you take on board with regards to making that decision?
Right. I mean, if you're just sticking it out there and not doing any promotion and nobody's reading it, that's not really a fair gauge of whether or not a book could be successful. But I think as much as important like as a series is, sometimes it's helpful to sort of sit back and see if there's potential there before jumping into it 100%. Like maybe you write the first couple of books and they're just not really taking off. You might think maybe I should try something else. But at the same time, we're kind of impatient as writers, and we're like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 weeks since I published it and I haven't sold 50 zillion copies yet. So I think, sometimes just throwing stuff at the dartboard or whatever and seeing what sticks, as they say, can be helpful too. So I kind of like the idea of writing a few pilots, even if they're just novellas or shorter works, and getting a feel, what are the reviews like? What are the sales like? I think I told you the second book that I published was Encrypted, and it's in that same world. And if that had been the one that had more reviews and it seemed to really take off and resonate with people, I could have turned that into a series. I did eventually write a sequel, but those were never as popular as the other ones, so that's why I put my focus on the Emperor's Edge books.
And I think that this leads nicely into lesson number 4, which was glowing reviews don't always make for a bestseller, and the book that gets hammered hardest might just sell well, which seems really counterintuitive. So I'm really curious about hearing your story there and whether you have any theories on why that was the case for you last year.
Right, I've seen this a lot with other people and also a little bit with myself. Last year I published kind of a contemporary fantasy called Torrance, and I'm about to write the second one now. And, the reviews a lot of the reviews were, there were some people that really loved it, and then there were a lot that were familiar with my other stuff and weren't as into it. It was a little different in that it's a modern story. It's first person, and it's just really a different narrative feel than most of my other work, and so I can see where regular readers might not be as into that. And also urban fantasy, contemporary fantasy versus epic or swords and sorceries can be a very different audience. So it's definitely got a pretty low average for me on Goodreads. I think it's a 3.5 or something. And on Amazon, the reviews aren't too bad, but they've kind of balanced out now. Early on, they were more like, oh, this is a 1-star. I can't believe it's by the same author. I'm like, oh, no, it's horrible. But at the same time, it sold quite well when I released it last fall. It had a really cool cover, I think. And, I did it 99 cents for a couple of days just to help it gain some momentum. And it really kind of sold well considering, aside from announcing it to my mailing list, I've never done any advertising for it. And then in January, just randomly, I got an email from someone at Amazon, and they wanted to make it one of their daily specials or something. It was $1.99. It's usually $3.99. Mm-hmm. And they made it $1.99 and still gave me 70% royalty. And, they plugged it. So I got several, 2,000 or 3,000 extra sales that month just randomly. Nice. So I'm definitely going to do the next one in the series. But when I first published it and started getting the less than stellar reviews, I was like, oh no, this is a waste. I almost yanked it. I said, I almost forget this series. I'm not going to do it. But, I think you just never know.
Yeah, and it also sounds like, it's good that readers were having a strong reaction to it. Whether it was a 1-star or a 5-star, at least it wasn't like just generic 3 stars across the board, right? It sounds like you were doing something right. And I'm curious about whether you ever thought about using a pen name to write under different genres. So, for your steampunk genre, use one pen name and then perhaps use your regular name for the high fantasy, or did that not cross your mind?
Yeah, it's something I've thought of, especially actually I did a contemporary mystery just a couple of months ago. That's the one where I really thought, oh, this is not fantasy at all. Maybe I should use a pen name. But once you build an audience and have a fan base, you really want to leverage them as much as possible. So it's sort of, there's going to be some people in your audience that they do like also contemporary mysteries, or maybe they'll try it just because it's something that you wrote. And if you start over with a pen name, starting over from scratch, the idea now, just like, oh my gosh, that'd be so much work. And
yeah.
Just, especially I'm not someone who had a lot of like really overnight success. It's really been a slow build for me, just kind of gradually building up a fan base. And so, I've managed to do a good job, I think, in like 3.5 years, but it's the idea of going through all that with another pen name is definitely not that appealing. And I think in this day and age, people can just easily go and look and read the blurb and see if it's something for them. If it's not, okay. But if it is, maybe they'll try it.
Yeah.
One exception might be if you're writing something like erotica with your under pen name, and children's fiction, you might want to have different names for that. Or even, just that's such an extreme different level of what people can expect in the book that you might offend some of your core audience, then I think it's something worth considering.
And do you have any tips or anything that you put in place to avoid potentially displeasing readers when you switch genres? Did you make a huge announcement about how different this was, or put anything in the blurb to kind of state who this was for?
I didn't with the contemporary fantasy, just because to me it seemed like, well, it's still fantasy, and I figure if people probably know if they're not into that, But maybe I should have said something like, oh, it's a little different for me. It's in first person, and it's a different tone than some of my other stuff. But I don't know. I always feel people can grab the sample if they want, or like when I launched it, it was only 99 cents. So they're not really going to be out a huge investment if it ends up being not for them.
Let's move on to lesson number 6. So you have 11 books out right now. You just published number 11, I believe. And lesson number 6 was a mid-list author with enough titles out can make a nice income from writing. So without getting into too many details, let's expand upon this and talk about how, at what point were you able to give up the day job and switch to full-time writing, and also, how did you publish 11 books? How many words do you write, and how many books have you published each year?
Okay.
There was a lot of questions that I just threw in.
Yeah, I was about a year into this when I switched to doing it full-time. I actually was self-employed before, and I was a professional blogger and had a lot of websites and made income from writing and nonfiction at the time, and selling the advertising. So it wasn't a huge stretch for me. I didn't have to go in and tell a boss I quit, and so I wasn't giving up any benefits. I already had to pay for my own health insurance and all that stuff. So maybe it wasn't as big of a stretch for me. But I think like maybe a lot of people that get into this, I checked out of the day job quite a ways before I actually quit doing it because I was just really excited about the fiction and that I realized we were now living in a time when I could make this work on my own. So, yeah, I've been able to do it. I think a lot of what's helped me been able to keep a steady income is that I publish pretty often. If not a full novel, then maybe a novella. I've got a series of steampunk novellas. I'm about to publish a new one of those. And that kind of lets you get something out in between the novels. And gosh, I've probably managed at least 4 novels a year, I would say. This last year I've been working on quite a few kind of pilots to try out new series, even though I'm not 100% done with the old one yet, because the fans wouldn't let me quit. But so I'm kind of always working on trying to become more efficient at writing and being able to get my ideas out there more quickly and get them to market. But yeah, I would say that as a midlist author, if you can write a lot and you enjoy it, then if you can build up even a modest fan base, then you're kind of assured every month that you release something new, especially if it's in a series and there's a fan base or readers that already want to read the next one. You can kind of figure out what your income will be month to month, and it's not quite so scary. I think it's what would be scary is when people have I'm lucky I didn't do super well right out of the blocks, because some people have their first or second book, it just takes off. It's got a great cover, a great blurb, whatever, or it's in a hot genre. And then I've sometimes seen those people not be able to keep it up after that. So I think the slow build is almost more reliable in a way. You're not hoping for lightning to strike. I mean, hey, we all hope we'll become a bestseller at some point, but with self-publishing and the 70% royalty, if you have 10 books out and you're selling maybe 200 or 300 copies each month of each title, that's actually a really good income if you're selling them for, $3 or $4. And 200 or 300 books a month seems like a lot when you're getting started, but when you look at what the Amazon sales ranking is for that, it's not all that impressive. People that have really good sales rankings are selling thousands of books a month of one title. Yeah. But I just, I think the point is you don't have to do that in order to do this full time right now. So it's really cool.
And you said in the post, lesson number 7 was about paying attention to foreign markets. So have you found that your sales have grown internationally in recent months?
Definitely the last couple of years, partially through Kobo, partially through iTunes, and also in the new Amazon stores. For some reason, Germany, I do pretty well. Right now, I haven't done foreign translations yet. I've kind of been listening to people on podcasts who are doing that, and it sounds really expensive. And it also sounds like it's really hard to make sure you get a good quality person that does a good job taking your material and putting it in a new language. And it's kind of hard to check up on that unless you actually have a friend or someone who can read both languages. So I haven't done that yet, but it's something I'm thinking of in the future. I think Germany especially would be a good place for me with my Emperor's Edge books, because I do get quite a few readers reading them in English from over there. And I think that's just been a result of having the book one for free in those stores. Kind of gradually people have found it, and I know I'm lucky too. I get a lot of readers telling me they recommend them to friends, and so the word of mouth really helps.
And I just wanted to touch upon that point that you said about putting the first book for free. Is your perma-free strategy to make it free on Smashwords and then kind of have it go free elsewhere? Is that how you do it?
Right. It's free on Smashwords, and Kobo now also lets you, if you upload directly there, make a book free.
Oh, okay.
And through Smashwords, it'll get into iTunes and Barnes & Noble. And so if Amazon sees it free everywhere else, they should match eventually. It seems to depend on the popularity of a book a little bit. I've known people who have been waiting and waiting for Amazon to make the match. I think it's just all automated, and it's kind of like how many times their little bot goes and checks your book page every day and checks it on different sites. So if you've sold a lot of copies, there's more links to your book throughout the site, so they keep it updated more often. But I think eventually it will, it'll find it if that's something you want to do.
Yeah. Great. Well, I've covered all the points that I wanted to talk about today. I really want to point viewers to your blog because I know they're going to be wondering how you sell so many books and what your marketing strategies are, but I think your blog does an excellent job at listing out everything, and I wouldn't want to ask you about all that because we'd be here all day. So could you maybe just let our viewers know where they can find you online, and anything that you would like to say to them before we go?
Well, I think as you said at the beginning, lindsayburoker.com is where I do my blog posting, and it's a mix of stuff to help other writers and stuff for my readers. Mm-hmm. And I'm on Facebook, also Lindsay Buroker. And if you've typed my name in, you'll find me everywhere. But I'm on Twitter too.
Okay.
I'm not as much on Google Plus. I'm trying to be better there, but any of those spots should be there.
Okay, great. And do you want to just show us your? Sorry, just show us your book covers before we go.
Oh, yeah. Sure, I've done a couple. I just grabbed them off the shelves.
Yeah.
That's kind of the steampunk ones there with a submarine kind of thing on the front. And then this is one in my Emperor's Edge series. So I don't always do paperbacks. I do them for my main series when I know people will want maybe signed copies and things for Christmas. So.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today, and I look forward to sharing this with everyone, and hopefully people will get in touch and start following your blog because it really is super useful, and I recommend it to everyone. So thanks for your time today.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.